Well, hello there. Welcome, everybody. What do you think, Justin?
Hello, I like it.
You
That's
like it?
sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
buddy.
Mary's working on some other ones.
Yeah, buddy.
So, we're going to revamp some other intros and reconstruct them and everything. So, hopefully, everybody
Nice.
likes them. So, what
Nice.
you been up
Surprise,
to?
everybody. Not much.
I
Just living
know.
life. Living life. Be surprised to see me this time of day. I'm usually still in my cave.
I know. You still got another show tonight at 9, too.
Is it 9 or 10? I can't remember.
9?
9 o'clock? Okay. That's
Yeah.
right. Special show tonight. I'm excited for it.
That's right. Yeah, you like that, Amy. I do, too. Hello, Amy. Hello, Roger, Liana. Welcome everybody that's coming in. Welcome Spooky Network in Japan and UK and China and Ireland and Canada. Everybody that's starting to tune in. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we have somebody I haven't spoke to in a while. Well, I'll take that back on an actual show. He's real famous. He's one of a kind. Man, he's a plethora of information, isn't he, Justin?
Oh, absolutely. The guy's even more, I think, educated than I am on this stuff. And that's about the biggest compliment I can give somebody when it
Yeah, I
comes to these
mean,
topics, you know?
no matter what topic it is, yeah. So let's
Yep.
introduce him. Ronald Murphy, come on down, kind sir. How are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
So I don't think I can follow that introduction, number one, nor am I going to be able to follow that amazing intro for this show, which was very, very impressive. But guys, listen, I am so flattered to be here. Both of you guys are some of my favorite people in the entire world. I feel as if you guys are family, and I've been looking forward to speaking with you for a while now, Grizz, but then seeing that our friend is here as well, too, this makes it even better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what have you been up to? I know you've been so busy.
I have. So I've been doing a lot of work with small town monsters. I did a series for them a couple years ago called Sasquatch Unearthed the Ridge. And the first season took place on the Chestnut Ridge in Western Pennsylvania, where I do the majority of my research, looking for Bigfoot. Oh, we okay? Yep. I saw that we had a little bit of lag there. But anyways, in the show, we were up there on a Bigfoot investigation, and we were doing some, tree knocking and some whoops and everything else that people do on television because people want to see that. They just don't want to see a lot of guys standing out in the woods with cool hats on. So we were doing this, so we were doing this for a while, and then all of a sudden we heard a very, very low moan. Not a howl, not anything like that, but just like a very, very low moan. Then almost immediately following that moan was the sound of wind chimes. Now, I'd never encountered sound before out in the woods like that. It was a very, we're lagging again there. Okay. It was lagging here again on my side, guys. Sorry about that. But we witnessed this sound going on. And then after the sound, we start experiencing orbs of light moving through the woods. And that led me down this new rabbit hole about spook lights, ghost lights, earth lights, whatever you want to call them. And I wrote a book called Lights in the Mist, which is being, it was just published on Halloween, as a matter of fact, by Small Town Monsters. So that's my newest book out. And you can also watch the program called, oh, I just forgot. But there's a movie that goes along with this as well, too, from Small Town Monsters. So you can get the book or you can watch the video or do both. It's actually free on YouTube. So you can't beat it, So you can go out there and watch that tonight.
Awesome. And where can they purchase the book at there, Ron?
I think you can go to Amazon, like everything else. But if you go to smalltownmonsters.com, you can get their products there for a little bit of a discount.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. So, Phantom Lights is the name of the movie. It took me there. So Phantom Lights is a compendium to the book, although it stands on its own very well. But I'm featured in that movie, and I'm very proud of it as well.
Awesome. So it's interesting you said wood chimes or the chimes, right? Because not too long ago, we were somewhere, And I was out in the woods and I heard the same thing, chimes.
Wow.
And I was like, there's no way that I just heard that, because why would you hear that in the middle of the woods?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what got me as well too, and that's the reason why I started to voraciously pursue this as a research endeavor, simply because I had no idea what to make out of it, and it doesn't make any logical sense. It was definitely a frequency. We talk about frequencies in this field all the time, but I think that what we encountered, and I think you could probably agree with this too, there, Grizz, is that what we encountered was the sound of the frequency as well, right? These chimes obviously had something to do with whatever phenomenon was going on as well. And I feel that it is a frequency based type of thing, and the sound was just one manifestation of that frequency.
Yeah, I totally agree. Justin, what's your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because you hear about a lot of different random sounds, right? I've heard people talking about hearing the sound of car door slamming, or like you said, wind chimes or flute or music, right? Or we've heard of what the metallic gates closing, or the creaking of gates, right? Chains. So I think it's very interesting because the truth is we have no clue the source of those sounds, absolutely none whatsoever. So it really goes to what are your beliefs of what you're experiencing at that time as to what it is, right? Because, Bigfoot supposedly is able to mimic not only human sounds, but all different kinds of sounds, right? So some people, if they're in the Bigfoot mindset, are going to go, hey, maybe that's a Bigfoot thing. Maybe we heard them just mimicking the sound that they've heard, on somebody's porch, and they're just trying to get a reaction. Or, that there's just a lot of different things, and it's one of the big mysteries. And it's like people say, you spend enough time in the woods, you're going to come across stuff and you're going to hear stuff that you just can't explain. That's
right. And I think what you have to say is very pertinent as well, too. All these things that we're talking about is really a subjective experience, right? You might be seeing it, or you might even be hearing it differently than other people. And I think that's what makes it unique as well, because you go out there and you come back with a very personal experience, almost as if you're gifted the experience. I've heard in Wendigo lore that sometimes you hear, some severe crashing, like you said, the sound of a car door closing, like something is kind of like breaking through. Almost whenever, a plane hits that sound barrier, there is something that is audibly breaking from one state of being into another state of being. And that's the only way that I can make any hide nor hair of this, is that what I witnessed was something that was a part of our world, but where it came from is the question, right? I mean, it was within our world, and it seemed to have intelligence to it as well, too. But to me, it seems as if it came from the other, if you will, because for lack of, you can call it interdimensional, whatever you want to call it, but it seems as if it broke through this veil that is separating us from them.
Well, yeah, that is absolutely, because anytime that matter moves, right, it's going to cause some type of reaction, because any reaction causes a chain reaction. So just like the sound barrier, but it's interesting that you and I heard chimes, because I've never heard anybody else hear that. And when I was turkey hunting, right before I saw that one Bigfoot, I heard a bell, and it was a weird bell. It was like a bell that you would ding, like on a tabletop, like you want service. It was that type of bell.
Right. And I think that what still gives me goosebumps to this day, even though I'm talking about it in a room and I'm 2 years removed from the experience, what still gives me the goose flesh is that there was a musicality to it. And there was definitely an intelligence to the sound. It wasn't just a random sound. Like, it wasn't as if you took wind chimes and just kind of threw them down on the ground. There was, now melody is too strong of a word, but there was definitely a sound in it that seemed to me it represented some sort of deliberate notes that were being hit for whatever reason.
See, Justin, that really, it's very interesting because
It
you
is,
know, represents a frequency, right?
Right. And that's where my brain was kind of going towards was, you know, we talk a lot, like you said, about frequencies and vibrations and all this stuff. And all sound is another way that we perceive a frequency. Right.
Absolutely.
So the sounds literally could just be something manifesting into our frequency. And one of the ways we're picking it up is the disturbances in our frequencies that we can pick up. And so that could very possibly, we're seeing a light, we're hearing a sound simply because that is how our body interprets certain frequencies and vibrations that we pick up, you know?
Right.
And that could also explain why the experience can be different, because we're all tuned a little differently. We perceive sounds and sights a little differently. A lot of people don't realize that. Studies have been shown that not everybody sees things the same way. Not everybody hears things the same way. You know, and a really good study of that is the difference between male and female vision. We don't see colors the same way. And it's weird because back in the day when they would do a laundry soap, for example, they would use specific chemicals in the soap that would make it more attractive to women's vision than men's vision. They had a product called bluing that they would put in, especially in the bleaching products and the products for white clothing, because it would make it a more vibrant, clean white to the vision of women, where men, we couldn't pick up the difference. We couldn't pick up that subtle difference, but women could. And so that's how you get a brighter white, is actually by bluing.
And we call that today makeup.
Right. And you can still do bluing today. You can actually buy bluing as a separate product. And so if you to me, if you put all that together, it's just more evidence of these, whatever the phenomenon is, it really is tied into how we view our world and how we can perceive our world through our senses. You know, everybody talks about paranormal. I always say it's real. We just don't know what it is yet. You know, it's undiscovered science. And we're just getting into the science of frequencies and vibrations and different things like that to start getting an understanding of how some of this stuff might work.
Right. So definitely preach on. I'm definitely on. I'm definitely in the same choir that you are. So as you know, a researcher, if this is indeed the case, then these kind of things has been experienced by humanity since the very beginning, because none of this exists in a vacuum. So as I look around the world, I'm starting to come up with some interesting theories. One of the theory being is that these ancient monuments that you see around the world may indeed be some sort of tribute or homage to an experience that was made on that particular area. Now, let me explain that a little bit. So like Stonehenge, you know, it's out in the middle of nowhere. People took a lot of manpower to get these particular stones to this area that's out in the middle of nowhere, okay? Now, of course, whenever you first see them, you know, people thought that it was a druidic altar. You know, some people thought that it was, you know, a calendar. And indeed, it may be all of that. But we're going back into the Stone Age whenever this was first created. Again, we see a very circular pattern. These things that happen again and again in the natural world, especially when we think about things like fairy rings and all that stuff. But anyways, it fits within the paradigm of the other side, okay? But, you know, whatever these stones are and whatever they were built for, I think that now modern science is able to go in there and find out that it might have been multifaceted. One of the most intriguing things in the past decade was taking drums inside the stone circle, inside the stars and stones. And whenever they were played, it act almost as a harmonic resonance chamber, that the sound that was emitted would come back and the vibrations would actually interact with the body itself. That's very interesting because there have been some notions that this may have been a place of healing, some sort of ancient hospital. And maybe they were employing, again, the idea that these sounds exist in the natural world and that we as human beings have stepped out of that vibration, right? It's still going on, but we stepped out of that vibration. And whenever we do that, now we are no longer at ease, right? We now have dis-ease. And in order to cure this disease, we have to be reintroduced to that universal tuning fork, right? And if you see about whenever you talk about chakras, a lot of times they're aligned by the sounds of, all different types of sounds. So this is nothing new. To see that around the world, even religions are based upon the idea of frequencies. You could call it the God frequency. And even Tesla talked about that as well too, that there may be a universal frequency out there that is kind of like the key to everything. Now, I'm a practicing Catholic. I believe in God and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying anything heretical here. But if you would go back into, the early Middle Ages, into the Dark Ages, up through the Middle Ages, we see these great cathedrals that were being built. And what is interesting, especially whenever you see these Gothic vaulting and everything, it's been proposed that whenever you enter the cathedral, it is as if you are stepping into the wilderness, okay? Because if you would step in there, think about this. You have the holy water there, which represents sacred fountains that people have been, pointing out since the very beginning as well too. And you have this great ribbed architecture above you that looks very much like trees. So it's like stepping back into the world where that rhythm is still existing, right? Back into, if you will, that idea of Eden or paradise, right? So you're going back to the source. And Gregorian chant, again, it has been suggested, whenever these sounds emanate from human voices within these cathedrals, it again, like our friend Stonehenge that was made 4,000 years before them, it still acts as a resonance chamber. And there might actually be healing that goes on there as well. So in order to look for miracles, of course, keep them in your prayers, but miracles might also exist simply by tapping in to that natural rhythm in this world that we have left behind.
No, I totally agree with that. No, it is. It really is. And Justin, what's your take on that?
Oh, I think it makes a lot of sense. Have you heard about the theory of the Great Pyramids being energy chambers and using resonating chambers and all this? They talk about how some of the beams and some of the king's chambers, if you go to the top of them, they have various like ridges, like carved or basically worn into them. And what they say is that was them tuning the frequencies to create energy. And basically the pyramids were giant energy generators. They have, it makes sense. They have evidence of certain chemicals being poured down into certain of the air tunnels that supposedly are to let the moonlight and sunlight in, right, from this sun or that star and that star. But they have evidence of certain chemicals being poured in there that would cause a specific reaction in the chambers, which would cause a certain type of pressure buildup, which would cause a certain type of vibration in these chambers. And they think the cap was capped with gold, right, and it literally would create a free energy source for the people around them. And so this is not a new idea. The problem is, I think a lot of people are so focused on their area of study that they're not getting the big picture of everything. And so when guys like us can come in and get an overview, right, and see a lot of this other stuff, we can kind of start going, hey, you're literally saying the same thing about Stonehenge as we're saying about the old bath chambers in Greece and Rome, where they used to say the bath chambers were tuned to certain frequencies so they could help heal you. And it's the same thing with this and the same thing with that. We can kind of start putting it all together. My personal belief is that frequency and vibration is old technology. I believe that was the technology before the Newtonian and Einstein and the theory of relativity, all this kind of stuff. I believe before that knowledge was lost, that was what their tech was based on, all about harmonics and acoustics. And I think that information has been lost. And then we switched over to this electrical technological age, and we think that we're the superior one, and we think that they were all idiots back then, didn't know what they were doing. But the evidence is showing that that's just not true. That is just not the case. I'm not going to say they were more technologically advanced, but I would say in their areas of study and what their technology was totally different than ours. Totally different than ours, and just as effective for their lives.
Right. So let me piggyback on this for a second. So we talked a little bit about Tesla as well, too, right? And the idea that, so Tesla, as he was experimenting with the idea of frequencies and the idea of trying to pull electricity right from the environment itself, he was approached by J.P. Morgan, who was he was going to be the person that was going to be paying for future studies. And he comes to Tesla, and he's really overwhelmed by the rate about which Tesla is starting to do his research and having good solid evidence that what he's producing is going to be worthwhile. And he says, how do we make money off this? And Tesla said, this is for the world. This is not a money making thing. So then J.P. Morgan went to Edison, and Edison was more than happy to take money from it. So I think that a lot of this has to do with finances as well too. If all of our secrets, all right, of all the things that we need out there, from medicine to free energy and everything, is simply in the world around us, and we need to find a way, a conduit, which to get this energy, nobody's going to fund that. Nobody's going to fund that because you can't make money off of it. And that's sinful. And again, it shows, what human beings are capable of. I believe firmly that everything that harms us out there, whether it be disease or natural, whatever the case may be, there is an antidote for that in the world around us. I think that if you have things that are happening to us that is causing this disease, there is definitely cures for out there in the natural world as well. And that being said, we as human beings may have already destroyed the cures in the rainforest because we tear everything down. But it's that idea that and I'm not, we're talking about, modern, but, getting back to what Justin said as well, too. We like to destroy the world around us. We like to domesticate things. And even going back to the Epic of Gilgamesh that was written right around the time of the pyramids, you can see within that work that there was already deforestation going on. The idea that people in the very early stages of civilization was already destroying the world around them. No wonder we're in the state that we are in, because everything that was natural out there has now become something that is chaotic. It's become foreign to us, even though this world in which we live has been our cradle, right? We have taken this paradise, this garden, and instead of tending to it and having stewardship and responsibility, we have not only turned our backs on the garden, but we've plowed it over and we've made it now in our own image. And now it's in our own image. You can see greed, and you can see, illnesses and everything else like that being produced. But I am a firm believer in the idea, like you'd said, Justin and Grizz as well too, that frequency, that universal harmonics, that genesis of everything that's out there, started out with this single type of tuning fork that sent everything into this vibration from which we come. And that vibration is still going on. The frequency is still out there, but we have not stepped back into it. What is that?
Tuning forks.
No, see, there you go. There you go. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that we need to look more at the idea of sound. And the reason why they're calling tuning forks is because even instruments can become untuned, right? And we are instruments as well. And we just simply need to be realigned and retuned. And once we are retuned, then we can play the proper music we are designed to create.
No, absolutely. And that's why I wanted to show those tuning forks, because I use those on my chakras and everything. And it goes right along with what you were saying.
Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I did a podcast a while back, a few months now, about frequencies and symbiotics and all this kind of stuff. And I was really surprised because there is no one single scientific discipline that simply studies frequencies and vibrations in and of themselves. Now you have acoustical, sciences where they study the science of sound and how sound waves work and what they can do. You have, physics, and they study energy and light. You have all these different ones that study different types, but nobody actually has a single overbranching science that studies frequency and vibration overall. And I don't know if that's by design. I don't know what that is, but I found that very intriguing because I was expecting to find a science that covered frequency and vibration, and it's just not there. You really have to go in by piece, whether it's, vision and understanding how frequency and vision all goes together with light frequency. And it was just astounding to me that there isn't an overcoming science for it. I think if there was, we'd be a lot further along on this path.
I agree wholeheartedly. And all of this stuff, when we talk about this, it's marginalized into pseudoscience. And in order to find anybody that would practice this or even listen to what we would have to say, you have to go to people that practice like holistic medicine. But that's not so bad, because holistic medicine simply takes in the overall of everything, right? As doctors nowadays, whenever you go in, they'll give you tests, they'll look at, particular things. But very few doctors ask you about, if you go out on walks, and all that stuff. They care about your weight. They care if you smoke. They care about your blood pressure. But they don't care about all that other kind of stuff that goes in with making you a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct. And there's some countries that are using frequencies to kill tumors and cure cancer. And just like you said earlier, if it's not about this, right?
That's right.
Like Tesla, nobody wants nothing to do with it.
Well, Western science is using ultrasounds to break up kidney stones.
Yes.
And that's
absolutely.
About the extent of it that we're using in Western medicine. That's a perfect example. That is a perfect example of using sound waves, because that's all ultrasound is literally ultra low frequency sound waves, and they break up the kidney stones so your body can pass them out. That's exactly the kind of thing we're talking about here. We're just saying it could be on a much larger scale, or you could say a lot smaller scale, even down to the cellular level of particular targeted frequencies to do things. I have a good friend who's in the military, and we've discussed using weaponry that uses acoustics and sound waves, and he fully confirmed that, yes, we use it. He knows without a doubt that we have acoustic weaponry in our arsenal, and that has been used, and it has been for a long time. This isn't new stuff. It's just not out there. People don't either understand it, or like you said, we get laughed at for it. And I'm big on conspiracies, but I'm not real big on that conspiracy as far as they're trying to hide that from us. I don't think they are. I think it's more of a tactical advantage. Just like we're talking Cold War style. Well, we don't want other people to know what we know science wise and stuff. You know what I mean? We could lose the advantage. But overall, the tech is out there. The science is there. It's 100% true science. Now we have to look at the applications of the science and how far are the applications going to go. And I don't
Yeah,
know,
so-
that's secret stuff. There's not a lot of people willing to put that out there.
Right. So that's another good point as well, too. So the reason why we know so much about infrasound is because there is a military component to it, right? That
Right.
it's a non-lethal component, but people have reported, and this is going back to studies that were done in the 1990s. So we're going back, 40 years almost on a lot of these studies. So what's going on is that the use of infrasound so impacts the human psyche that we can think that there's somebody else in the room with us. We can hear voices. We see things that aren't there, and we can have feelings of dread and and anxiety. So if all that can work on the psychological level, imagine what it can do on the physiological level as well too. And now to kind of connect dots here. Now what happens when we talk about there's things out there within our environment, whether you call them earth lights or whether you call them Bigfoot or dogmen or whatever. And what happens if they're capable of producing infrasound as well? Now, people might think, from sci-fi, but it's not. We know that there are a lot of aquatic animals that produce infrasound, whales and dolphins, but check this out. Giraffes and elephants and tigers and lions all produce infrasound, as well as alligators and crocodiles. Exactly. So the idea that there are animals out there, and this isn't made up and this isn't science fiction, but we know that infrasound exists. Now, if it does exist, then that means that other animals are capable of using that and evolving with it.
Absolutely.
And I'm a firm believer in what we call Bigfoot, is definitely capable of using infrasound because it is an amazing way to be territorial without being confrontational. If you can take control over somebody in your territory without showing yourself, that is a great evolutionary trait to have, and it's going to keep you elusive and hidden for quite some time.
I totally agree with that. Absolutely.
And whether it's instinctual, right? Is it instinctual or is it targeted? Do they have willful control over it? I believe it goes one step further. I believe not only is it just using infrasound, which I firmly believe they do, and it does have effects on us, but I think they might even be able to change their own body's frequency. It is one of my theories, that they're literally able to adjust their frequency to a point where we are unable to perceive them. And I think there's other entities out there as well. And it's funny because if you think about this, this is crazy. Star Wars or Star Trek years ago had an episode on exactly that. Geordie LaForge with his eye binder thing, right, that he could see in all the spectrums all at once. He could only see these certain alien entities because they were only in a spectrum that picked up on his visor. Nobody else could see them.
Wow.
So this is not a new concept. This is not a new concept, guys. It's the application of the science, and where it leads us is to the possibilities. Again, it's not new at all. Not new. We must be getting the touchy territory. We're starting to freeze up a little bit.
I saw that. That's pretty crazy.
I was thinking because every time we see something back from the 60s and 50s, right, in sci-fi, in 70s and 80s, it's become reality.
Mm-hmm. You're right. So when we talk about Bigfoot and things, I get a lot of criticism about this as well too, because I've researched the idea of fairy lore for probably about 35 years now. I'm getting to the point right now where I'm thinking, when we talk about Bigfoot, and we talk about these other, cryptids, what happens if they are indeed simply vibrations within the environment, if they are some sort of living energy that is able to either take form vibrationally or allow us to perceive them as something that they want us to see or we simply fill in the blanks because there's some sort of vibration working within our bodies. We need to think about that as well too. And if that is the case, maybe there are all kinds of other intelligences out there within our environment that we are simply overlooking because we can't see them or we can't perceive them.
Well, that is correct. We know there's up to 13 dimensions, and the U.S. government just realized and stated last year that there's possibly 19 or more. And them going on record and stating that is interesting. What's your all's thoughts on that?
No, I agree.
I think what they're calling dimensions are frequency ranges.
That is correct.
Personally, I think all they are is a frequency range, and it's just like our dimension is the range that we can perceive with the help of tools or just by ourselves naturally. That's our so-called dimension. And you have lower and higher frequency ranges that we can't perceive, but whatever entities are in that range can perceive it just fine, and they can't necessarily perceive ours. So when it comes to dimensions, multiverse, I personally think that's how it's laid out. It's not necessarily, like this big mystery thing. I really think it's like a timeline or a number line, and you have 0 and 0 through 10 and 10 through 20 and 20 through 30, and each one of those segments is a frequency segment, and then that's a so-called dimension. And I believe you're going to have some things that can kind of overlap dimensions. So when we start talking about things that we like shadow men or Bigfoot or certain things that we can perceive sometimes and sometimes we can't, or they disappear or all these things, I think what they're literally doing is stepping over that frequency boundary.
That is very astute. Very astute. Absolutely. I will buy into that completely.
I think it makes as much sense as any other theory out there that I've come across. And the other thing I've thought about is like a portal. Everybody talks about a portal as a thing, like it's a doorway. But what if all a portal really is the ripple between that frequency range, right? So think of it not as a door that you open. Think of it as when you put your finger into a pond and the ripples go around your finger. It's not a doorway. It's simply an effect of something crossing that barrier from the air to the water. It's something disrupting that.
Yep. I use that analogy as well. And that can be produced by throwing a rock into it, but it also can be produced by putting sound to it as well, too. Yeah, it will create these ripples as well, too. And there was something that you were making such great sense of all this kind of stuff. And I was just thinking about like the perception of reality. So if you were a dog, your reality is far different than ours because they can hear things that we cannot hear, and they can see things that aren't there as well too. So I love that definition you have of dimensions, because it doesn't seem so sci-fi at that point. It seems very logical at that point, that it's just simply different frequencies. That makes all the sense in the world to me.
Yeah, it does.
I think
it
makes
like
sense.
The way you both are putting it together and simplifying it for the audience to make it mainstream, easier to digest.
Yes, well, I mean, it's still hard for us to digest as well, too, because we're in the infancy. And going back, going full circle, if you could imagine how we as the human race would have proceeded if we just kept on building off of what the ancients know, where would we be at today? And I think that is one of the travesties that we would have to say. I think that, and somebody just put about like the idea of grids as well, too. I'm also a firm believer in the idea of ley lines as well, too. And often you see a lot of churches built on ley lines, because as we go with the idea of frequencies, then you can also go by extension too, that the earth has different centers around it in which these frequencies are amplified, or, they're stronger in certain areas, and people have always gravitated to those areas. So I think that, like I said, I think that what we get to the point, we come to the point where we're educated, and all this kind of wisdom is indoctrinated out of us because there's too much woo in it. And it sounds like something out of superstition, We don't want to talk about the miraculous. We want to talk about something scientific here. But again, like Justin said as well too, once it has a military application, right? Not so much that it's going to do anybody good, but once you can harm somebody with it, then people will latch onto it and get it to the point where it needs to be. But I think that if we would sometime just use all this intellect that we have, instead of trying to destroy ourselves and try to come together and unite and make this world the way it was intended to be, we would be so much better in all aspects, whether it's religious or commercial or whatever the case may be. We would just be so much better.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And we talk about the woo and things, right? If we didn't have the woo, we would see these creatures or beings, whatever you want to call them, on a more regular basis. And we wouldn't see footprints like you have that appear and disappear and not find anything, right? But we are basing things off of experiences and encounters and try to make sense of it, of what we know, and try to wrap our minds around it and explain to other people in society. Because we don't have the technology or the understanding or the quantum physics to understand what these creatures or beings or Sasquatches, whatever you want to call them, are capable of doing. Just like aliens, right? We don't understand how they function and how they live and what they do. It's not like we sit down and interview them.
Yep, that's right.
Depends on who you talk to. I would say, I mean, that's exactly the exact reason I came up with the electric eel theory that we've talked about a few times. Is the electric eel was only studied in the 1700s, the same time they were discovering electricity and how it worked. So what if Western science had discovered the electric eel 20 years before they knew what electricity was? How would they describe an electric eel and what it does? They wouldn't be able to, because they wouldn't have the knowledge, the science, the understanding of electricity to describe the effects that this eel has on nature. It'd be woo, it'd be magic. They would have no idea. And so that's where I have that electric eel theorem or theory or whatever you want to call it, that kind of gives an example of where we are now. A lot of this stuff is science. We just don't have the ability to understand it yet because we're not there yet. It's not necessarily magic. It's not necessarily illogical. It's not that it doesn't make sense. We just don't have the ability to understand it. And the other thing I want to put in there is I don't make no bones about it that I'm a Christian. I believe in the Bible, but I believe in the Bible probably in a little bit different way than a lot of Western Christians do. And I think what we're talking about here is exactly the circumstances the Bible talks about when it comes to our fallen world, how we're destructive and how we need to be rebuilt, and how Jesus and God are going to come and rebuild our world back to the perfection that it was originally meant to be. And that's exactly what you were talking about, Ron, was this idea of back in the day, we had this understanding of how things worked in harmony, and then we started slowly losing that and destroying ourselves. And I think that is exactly in line with the biblical text. And so I talk to a lot of Christians, and a lot of times I'll get, you're being blasphemous, you're being heretical. And I go, no, it's not. It falls in line directly with what the Bible talks about. It's just looking at it at a different perspective, but it's still exactly the same thing. The exact same thing.
Exactly.
So I had to throw that in there too.
Yeah. No, I had a professor. I remember whenever I was in graduate school, I took this one literature class, and he pointed out, from a very dogmatic point of view, is that whenever you have this point of creation, whatever that is, so we could talk about the ancient past, the farther you move away from that pinpoint of creation, the more corrupt we as a human race become. Think about this. Right. So the pyramids were one of the first things that civilized man put together, okay? And it wasn't until the Eiffel Tower was created that we now had something on Earth that was actually larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. So it took that many years, up until the 1700s, before we had something that was larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. So we're talking about people that were basically using their hands and stone tools to put up something that has withstood, time. As even the time fears the pyramids, as it's been said. So there obviously is something going on. Even if you would undertake something as simple as, say, Stonehenge. If I grabbed a group of my buddies, we had 100 people out there, we're not going to be able to do that. There's no way.
Yeah.
They were relying on other techniques and other skill sets that we simply do not have. And I do think, look, again, it will be great to sit here and talk from a completely religious aspect, but it turns some people off. And guess what? Science isn't going to pay any mind to it. So we'll have to try to use the certain vernacular. So, but again, getting the idea of this could be biblical as well too. And I completely agree. So we remember the woman that had the issue with a bleeding problem, and she doesn't want to confront Jesus, but she touches his cloak, right? And he feels the power drain out of him, right? Again, this is tapping into that idea of resonance and harmony. Somebody reached into that and drew from it, right? That's not blasphemous. That's not heretical. And indeed, it might be scientific as well, the more we would study this kind of thing.
Exactly. Well, and like the story of Jericho and the walls come tumbling down. They didn't just fall by themselves. There was a lot of vibration and acoustics and specific formula to make that happen, to weaken the structure.
That's right.
That's what I'm saying. They can back each other up. So we can look at this from a purely scientific standpoint, which is generally what I do. Because like you said, the moment you start bringing anything religious text-wise, the 90% of the population is just going to kick it off and then not even listen to you. But when you can bring all this stuff up and then afterwards kind of mention it if you're in the right group of people and they want to hear that part of it, you know what I mean? Then you can tie it in and show them it's not heretical, it's not blasphemous, But the idea is this is our reality. We just don't understand it all yet. It's as simple as that. The science is there. We're learning the science. The problem is, and I see this all the time in a lot of the debate forums that I'm in on Facebook, is they go, oh, well, we don't discuss that part because that's not our science. If I'm in an evolutionary debate forum, they go, well, we don't talk about the origin of life. We don't talk about abiogenesis because that's not biology. Biology is after life started. So we don't talk about that. And I go, but it's intrinsically related. How can you separate the two? But see, that's kind of the problem, is everybody is so interested in only their little tiny portion that they can't sue or can't see the big picture. Oh, there's Jennifer joining us, guys. Yay.
Yeah, she's been here for a few. But see, and
she was doing some newspaper stuff, so she had to step out.
This is where years ago we used to draw a line in the sand and say I would never toe this or I would never cross it. However, with interviewing people and seeing things and talking to people like Ron and other people, I erase the line and I never put the line back down in the sand because you have to be open. Because like we were talking about, there's things we just do not comprehend or understand because we cannot prove it by our science or by our technology.
That's right. That's exactly right. And we also have to get to the point in the field, in all fields, really. We can't keep on pretending that religion does not exist because religion has such a pull on people, right? The way I view the world is going to be colored by the watercolors that are on a religious palette because that's the way I was brought up. And there's no reason why we can't intertwine the two. To say that religion is fanciful or whimsical or it's an archaic superstition, that's taking our humanity and throwing it away and discounting so much. I think that when we talk about strictly science, science isn't necessarily atheistic. It's the human being that's using that science. that makes it atheistic, right?
Yes.
And whenever I read Robert Kirk in his Commonwealth of Fairies, he said only the atheists cannot see fairies, and I think there's something to be said about that as well too.
Absolutely.
But you have to be able to believe. You have to believe in peace in order for there to be peace. You Yep. Okay, we're back. See, when we get to a certain point, they say that's enough of that. Yeah.
Right.
It's so much of this does come about belief, because once we do that, once we believe in something, that definitely does, again, getting back to frequencies, that changes the frequency of everything. If you believe in something, then you have the possibility of manifesting it as well, too. And you have to manifest the world that you want around you. You have to change the world inside you first. And then once that's done, and this is a very Buddhist concept as well, too, that you can now impart that inner peace that I have with the natural world around us as well, too. Talking about that ripple in the pond, if I have goodwill, that goodwill is going to go out and affect everything around me.
Yes, and I you know what? I know the hour went by quick, but Ron, how does people find you, follow you, and reach out to you, kind sir?
You can find me on Facebook. I would love to be able to talk to you guys. I think I'm up to about 5,000 friends right now on my personal page. But you can find Ronald L. Murphy Jr., which is my page. That you can follow me as an author. You can find me on Amazon. I have all my books there, and I actually do have a book out called "The Harmonics of Humanity," which discuss this in great detail. And then you can find me also on Small Town Monsters as well, too. And remember, Phantom Lights, guys, it's free on YouTube. It's not going to be there forever. So if you get a chance, go out there and watch it and let me know what you think about it. I would love, and your listeners as well, too. I would love to hear feedback.
Somebody on LinkedIn and also on X wants to know, they want to get an autographed copy of your books. How do they do that?
You know what, guys? You just lagged off. I didn't even hear what you said.
LinkedIn and X, they want to know how to get autographed copies of your books.
Okay. So go to Ronald L. Murphy Jr. So it's my name, Ronald L. Murphy Jr. at yahoo.com. That's my personal email address. Send it on over. Tell me what you want, and I'll send it out to you.
There you go. What do you think, Justin?
Awesome, man. I always love sitting and talking with Ron. Some of my favorite memories are us hanging out at the big house up in Kentucky when you came to help us out, and just hanging out and talking about this stuff, man. It's always a great time. Jen and I are working hard to try and get stuff back together for next year because we want to start putting together events and stuff again. I know we've talked to you about it a couple times, and we're always looking forward to having you come around and hang out, and just always appreciate it, man. Always appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, don't forget about Brian Barber's new show tonight at 9 p.m., the premiere. And from coast to coast around the world. Thanks, Ron. We'll talk to you soon, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
YouTube channel near you.